every single time my back hurts, I know it's because I've been stressed and I haven't walked enough. So it's like we have to learn our own triggers for sure. And that's the work of a lot of the anxiety work I do. I work with clients who also have debilitating panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and really focus on what's the root cause of that.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have a guest that's going to be teaching us about a very important topic, Michelle Shapiro. She is an integrative functional registered dietitian in New York City who has helped over 1,000 plus clients reverse their anxiety, heal longstanding gut and immune issues, and approach their weight in a loving way. Michelle has a virtual practice of 5 nutritionists where she and her team work one-on-one towards these goals. She's also the host of the Quiet the Diet podcast, where she helps listeners bridge the gap between body positivity and functional nutrition. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Talor, the honor and joy is mine. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so am I. I'm really excited to talk about these topics that you're an expert in. Why don't we start with just a brief background of how you kind of got into the work that you're doing today?
Absolutely. So I grew up in New York City, in Queens, New York, which was a very diverse and amazing and beautiful place for so many reasons. I grew up always in a larger body, and then was going to the school at the University of Delaware and realized I need to lose weight in order maybe to fit in, because it's not going to be like people in New York who are so accepting and incredible. So I went on a really rapid weight loss journey before college and lost close to 100 pounds in what was like a 3 or 4 month time frame. Very not recommended, by the way, to do what I did. And from that, I developed all these chronic illnesses that seemed to come out of nowhere. And so it's really been my mission to help people, if they want to lose weight, lose it the right way, without getting all of the anxiety, thyroid issues, gut issues that come along with rapid weight loss. And that's really been my mission for the past 10 years.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So what are some of the wrong ways to lose weight, and what are some better approaches?
Yeah, I think when we're first approaching weight loss, we need to make sure that the body is in a state that is prepared for that weight loss. And what that means is that your detox and drainage pathways for your liver are wide open, something I know you speak about and work with also, Talor. And then also that we have the kind of nervous system capacity to handle that huge shift. I think where a lot of people get tripped up is they go on very, very low calorie, not being mindful of protein, not being mindful of micronutrients. And during this weight loss process, we actually spill a lot of toxins out of our fat cells. And if we don't have the capacity to move those out of the body during the weight loss process, we can kind of get into this cycle of chronic illness as a result after.
That's very interesting. I actually have not heard many people talk about the fact that when you lose a lot of weight, you can have a lot of toxins being released, and you have to have a way to be able to detoxify that. That's really, really interesting. So I agree with you in terms of like calorie counting. It's not sustainable. Yes, of course, if you eat less calories, you'll lose weight. We get it, but it's not sustainable. You can lose muscle. There's all sorts of other issues with it, right? So not really ideal.
Exactly. Especially putting, I think, protein forward and protein first is really important in that journey. Not only for the fact that, like you said, it's more satiating, but protein is the cornerstone of every one of our body processes. It is so essential. Again, not only for satiety, not only for the creation of our hormones and all of these other functions that proteins have, our enzymatic reactions, but also because protein is the basis for one of our major antioxidants, glutathione, which is 3 different amino acids together, essentially, and for so much other of these detox processes. So it's so important to be conscious, I think, of consuming enough on a weight loss journey and consuming enough protein. And like you said, counting calories can also be so psychologically damning. It can take away that beautiful connection we have with food, which is that food is this like life force that keeps us alive. It's this amazing energy and this beautiful thing that creates life within us. And if we view food just in the paradigm of calories, we lose a lot of that joy around food as well.
Yeah, yeah. And also, doesn't it do something to your metabolism when you cut calories way too much? Explain to listeners a little bit about, even myself, I don't know that I fully understand how metabolism works and how people can, you hear about people ruining their metabolism, or I got to regain my metabolism because I lost too much weight too fast. What does that actually mean? Can you explain that a little?
I'd love to explain that. I also am going to use an example to explain that. So, do you remember the show The Biggest Loser? Were you a watcher of it ever? I think we all were, honestly. It was very inspiring, I feel like, for us at the time. They did a study on 14 out of 16 of the Biggest Loser, like it's one of the top contestants or top finalists. When they did the study a few years after they had finished their time on the ranch, 14 of 16 of them regained a majority of the weight that they had lost. So I think all of us were thinking, wait a second, did they go home and just start eating completely random things? Did they stop working out? That actually wasn't the case at all. What happened was they actually went home from the ranch. They were eating very low calories. I'm talking like 12 to 1400 calories a day and working out for hours a day. And their weight kept coming back on.
Wow.
What we realized was when they measured their basal metabolic rate at the beginning of it, which is like the amount of calories we burn at rest, it had dropped so much from what they would anticipate in someone in that new body size. Because for instance, let's say someone is 300 pounds. And let's say on average, this is very rough numbers, but just for a framework, they can burn 3,000 calories a day. A 150-pound person can maybe burn 1,500 calories a day. What happened with these people is when they got to the 150 pounds, they were burning 1,000 calories a day. So they compensated over what they actually needed to. And this is a process called adaptive thermogenesis, which is that since our body's primary goal is to keep us alive, our metabolism will adapt according to what it thinks it needs to keep us alive. And then we have other hormonal interactions that come up as a result that try to keep our body at certain points, at certain set points. So our body doesn't love weight loss. It really doesn't like weight loss at all. It thinks we're starving. And as a result of that, it will start to accommodate our metabolism to require less and less calories. I think we used to think that these numbers were much more drastic. And now we're starting to realize the percent for adaptive thermogenesis is maybe smaller, but the overall basal metabolic changes can be quite drastic when you lose weight rapidly and really scare the heck out of your body. And your body thinks it's starving and then says, let's use the least amount of fuel as possible to make our body processes work.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So how do you then lose weight without ruining that metabolic process?
I think that the first approach would be going as low and slow as possible. And then there's a key hormone in place here. And this is a hormone released from our fat cells called leptin, our adipose tissue. And leptin, I think we've heard floating around in the nutrition space, but I think leptin is one of those key regulators of our metabolism, and it's a key regulator of our cravings. So leptin will help us to feel full, and it will help us to have our metabolism operate more efficiently. What we have to be sensitive to in a weight loss journey is to make sure our leptin continues to be sensitive. And what I think is most important for leptin is actually what I would call the acts of being human, like making sure you're getting sunlight, connecting with the people you love, sleeping really well, getting adequate minerals, not having super inflammatory foods, and really focusing on that, striking that beautiful omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, and also not eating many highly processed foods on a weight loss journey. And Talor, what always concerned me about Nutrisystem, MetaFast, those kind of programs is that you're eating highly processed foods in small calories. And that's why the weight regain is so drastic. It's also why these GLP-1 medications and weight loss surgeries are potentially so effective, is because they also alter your ghrelin and leptin levels. I think is a piece of it.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Speaking of those GLP-1s, the Ozempics and things that everyone's heard of and the hot topics these days, what are your opinion on those types of drugs?
I think that for the right person, they can be life-saving. And I think that life-saving for some people means just not even having thoughts about food all day. And then I've seen for some people pretty disastrous consequences, not only on their relationship with food, but quite literally the drugs had a really inflammatory effect for them, and it caused other health issues. So if it's a great tool for the right person at the right time in their lives, but when they're battling other health concerns, it might stir up a little more trouble than
Yeah,
help.
that's kind of again, I'm no expert on it, but kind of from what I've been hearing, it sounds like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe if someone's 100 pounds overweight or 200 pounds overweight, and they've really struggled to lose weight for a long time and nothing has worked for them, maybe in that case the benefits outweigh the risk. But my concern is when I have friends who are like, they want to lose 15 pounds to have a six pack for the summertime. And so they start start injecting themselves with these drugs, just to try to lose 15 pounds. And then they're losing a disproportionate amount of muscle, usually when you lose weight, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting because some studies show that you can keep muscle on more efficiently than if you naturally lose weight. And some studies show you actually disproportionately lose muscle. I think they're still figuring out the exact percentage, but it's a concern to be losing muscle when you're losing weight. And it should be a top concern for people because, again, muscle is bioactive through our immune system, our nervous system. It interacts and interfaces with all parts of our body. So I agree with you. The name of the game is keeping that muscle on, especially if people are not overweight or in larger bodies. You have to do that, kind of benefit risk analysis.
Yeah. Yeah. And forcing yourself to eat protein while you're on it. Cause I had a friend who was on it. He's like, I didn't have cravings. Oh, I just ate a little salad and that was it. I was good. And I'm like, okay, but you took in 0 grams of protein that day, not really good for keeping your muscle, cause then if you lose 10
Because it
pounds,
gives you
but you lose 7 pounds of muscle in that 10 pounds. And then after you go off the drug, you gain the 10 pounds back and now you have 7 pounds less of muscle. That's a problem.
That's a huge problem. And I completely agree with you. And you're absolutely right. The reason why people actually tend to crave protein the least of any macronutrients while on these drugs is because when you have it delays gastric emptying, which will leave food kind of sitting in your stomach for longer. That's the intention of it, because then the gastrin will make you feel like you're more full, essentially. But protein digestion primarily happens in our stomach. So I notice when people have acid reflux a lot too, they stop craving protein. It's very common. It's kind of inducing a state of reflux for a lot of people too. So you stop craving protein specifically, and that's the number one nutrient you need on a weight loss journey. You're so right about that.
Interesting. Well, I do want to get into some of the psychological things in a minute, because you have some fascinating things around there and how you've helped so many people with anxiety and changing the way they eat and changing the way that they think about things. But real quick, just to kind of close the loop on this part of it. So the healthy way to lose weight, right? Again, so we're avoiding, this is kind of interesting too, because I noticed that the same foods that cause inflammation, the same kind of processed foods, all the same foods that cause inflammation, which I have said over and over on this podcast, that inflammation is literally the key to health is lowering inflammation in the body as much as possible. Every disease stems from inflammation, all of that, right? So it's the same foods that cause inflammation that tend to cause weight gain as well. And again, is a calorie a calorie? Is a calorie of satiating protein the same as a calorie from a Twinkie? Doesn't seem like it, right?
It's such a good question. So I will say this. If any person went on an extremely low calorie diet, regardless of the type of calories you were getting, do I believe weight loss could occur? Probably. Do I believe that weight loss would be healthy for the person? No. I don't believe that in every case weight loss is healthy. I don't believe in every case weight loss equals being healthier even. It's not the truth. So I think that many people actually rely on processed foods to lose weight because they get a little bit more of like a dopamine response for each calorie that they're getting. So they'll get like that feeling that's better. I think in ways of sustainability of weight loss, in ways of what the downstream effect is on inflammation, your hormones, the weight loss itself is not going to prevent any autoimmunity, any inflammatory issues down the line. And I think the thing that makes weight itself inflammatory is, of course, that we have this immune system piece of our actual fat tissue that we send out immune responses from it. But I think that that the piece of carrying weight that makes it inflammatory is the immune system piece. So not all weight loss is good weight loss. Like you're saying, sometimes we lose a lot of weight, but we're not losing it in the right way. And that's where that are all calories the same. Maybe all calories are the same for the pounds on the scale, but they're not the same for our health.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've also seen people who it didn't seem like they lowered their calories that much, but they like cut out alcohol and gluten. And all of a sudden they just lost a ton of weight. I know people who are like, yeah, someone told me recently, yeah, I just stopped eating bread. I lost 30 pounds in like 6 months. I was just like, just stopped eating bread. And it's not like he was like, oh, I'm consciously going to count my calories and take in less calories or anything like that. It's just, he kind of cut out an inflammatory food.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're carrying water weight on you, especially if the fat is a visceral fat, that's a dangerous fat and near the wrong organs, I think the inflammation piece is key. When I first was a dietitian, I definitely was gung-ho, like just paleo. If we do paleo, everyone's going to lose weight and everyone's going to feel amazing. And then I'm like, okay, there's some people who also need to be conscious of portions and things, but there are a lot of people, like you said, who when they actually start cleaning up their diets, they lose weight without any consciousness around portion size because their root cause of weight gain is that inflammation.
Yeah.
It's not actually the amount of calories they were eating. It was the inflammation for them.
Yeah, I'm actually a big I'm the same as you because paleo healed the inflammation in my body. And I'm just like, why isn't everyone just going paleo? It's so simple. You can still eat all these foods and you'll lose weight and lower inflammation. And it's like, honestly, like and not to kind of say this in a bragging way, but I eat as much as I want to eat. But I don't eat processed foods. I don't eat fried foods. I don't eat seed oils. I don't eat grains and things like that, right? So I feel there's only so much I can eat because I'm satiated by the proteins and the healthy fats and things like that I'm eating. So for me, I don't diet. I don't portion control. But there are certain foods. I don't eat bread. I don't eat pasta. I don't eat fried foods. I don't, so those kind of rules just naturally, right? When it's why these people can go carnivore and they're just eating tons of protein and they're not hungry.
Exactly. Yeah. When I was first a dietitian, because the conventional dietitian schooling before I became a functional dietitian was really focused on calories, macronutrients, and things like that. The paleo diet was kind of my gateway drug into functional nutrition and functional medicine because I was like, oh my gosh, you can eat in a way that literally heals your cells. Like that just was not even a question in my conventional dietetics degree. So it really was that transitional piece for me too, where I was like, oh, it is a root cause eating plan, which is the cornerstone of functional nutrition and functional medicine, is always looking at the root cause too, which makes it exceptional. And we're not salespeople for paleo, but I personally love it so much still too, after 10 years.
Yep. So then just to so people are maybe still be wondering, okay, I know don't eat the processed foods. I want to lose weight. I can't lose too much weight too fast. I don't want to cut my calories too fast. What's a healthy amount of weight to lose? Is it like 1 pound a week or two? You can lose 2 pounds a week. I guess it would depend on the weight and size of the person, right? But just kind of curious, kind of closing that loop on the healthy way to lose weight. We spoke about the types of foods, but what's the kind of sweet spot where you won't wreck your metabolism and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say if I was again if I had to lose 100 pounds again, what would I do? Honestly, I would make sure I'm getting beautiful detox and drainage. So I'm going to make sure my nutrient levels are all in a really good spot. I'm going to be checking my B vitamins. I'm going to be checking vitamin C, my antioxidants, A, D, E, K. I'm going to be checking all of those. I'm going to be probably prepping with some glutathione supplements. I'm probably going to be doing castor oil packs on my liver to make sure that things are moving along properly. I'm going to be doing sauna. I'm going to be doing things to prepare for the next step in my weight loss journey. And it's going to involve detox and drainage support. That's the first thing I'm going to do. When it comes to the actual weight loss piece, I would be making a plan that's very protein forward. I would be looking to have 30 grams of protein in each meal. My best friend, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, has an equation for protein that's optimal for weight loss, which is 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So I would be doing that calculation for myself. So if I'm a person who's 300 pounds, I want to be 180 pounds. I'm eating 180 grams of protein per day. And then while I'm eating that, I am focusing on the quality of these foods. And then I'm building probably those high quality carbohydrates and those high quality fats within that structure too. So leading with protein first, and then adding and making sure you're getting adequate amounts of those as well. And the whole time I'm focused on checking in with myself. How do I feel this entire way? Am I feeling excessively hungry? Am I feeling faint? Am I feeling not nourished? Checking in on my nutrient levels, making sure I'm not getting more sick, because that probably means you're going too quick. And then when it comes to the actual number of weight that I'd want people to be considering, I it's hard because a lot of our clients and the people we work with, they're not going to experience weight loss in this like 1 pound a week way. Usually because they're so inflamed, it'll actually look like 0 pounds, 3 pounds, 0 pounds, 2 pounds, because there's going to be water fluctuations happening along the way too, especially if you start consuming less carbohydrates. So I would certainly, and I think carbohydrates are essential on a weight loss journey as well. And I would not have people go very low carb, but really just before we think we're in a plateau, make sure you're hydrating enough, you're getting enough minerals, your sodium, potassium, magnesium, even calcium, making sure you're getting enough. And then making sure there's a trend over time that's going downwards. If you are losing like 4 pounds a week, it's probably too fast. If you're noticing other symptoms come up and you start becoming this like chronically ill person out of nowhere, it's probably too fast. And that's where you want to backtrack and start optimizing in that way. But it's so hard to say because people lose weight and their body, everyone's body's so different. Some people do lose 1 pound a week. My clients are like super inflamed, super sick. So those are the clients who need to do it in a way that's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, those are some great tips. Yeah, so detoxing through sauna, making sure you have your minerals, electrolytes, and things of that nature as well. The castor oil pack is interesting. I don't know a whole lot about that, but I have been hearing quite a bit about it. That's interesting. Tell us, why is that effective?
Absolutely. So our liver is our main site of detoxification. There are certain compounds in castor oil, which when I say castor oil pack, I literally mean you're taking like a flannel, you're getting organic hexane-free cold pressed castor oil, you're putting it on it and you're putting it on your liver. Castor oil is this incredible oil that it can literally penetrate through our body's layers to directly impact liver function. So it has some beautiful anti-inflammatory compounds that when applied topically can literally seep into your liver and support your liver. And this has been tremendously well studied in women's hormones and also in detoxification processes.
Nice. Very cool. In terms of carbs, what you mentioned, you don't want people to go too low carb. What is low carb to you? Would you consider low carb, and what are your favorite kind of healthy carbs that you would like your clients to be on?
I have a carb sweet spot. So what is considered a low carbohydrate diet is generally less than 130 grams per day. People do not usually consider that a low carbohydrate diet. They usually consider it less than 20 grams of carbs a day. That would be considered a very low carb diet or a keto diet. If you are between 20 and 130, you're kind of in nowhere's land when it comes to metabolic flexibility. And what I mean by that is most people need either carbs or fat to be that kind of primary go-to fuel source in order to either be using carbs or using ketones and then to float between the two of them for energy. If you're between 20 and 130, people usually feel very low energy because they just don't, their body hasn't chosen which one do I go with? Do I go with carbs or ketones? I don't have enough carbs, but I'm also not low enough where I'm going to start favoring ketones. So I like when people have more than 130 grams of carbs per day. That's going to vary based on calorie amounts. But even in someone who's consuming a 1,200 calorie a day diet, which would be extremely restrictive, and I can't imagine a person I would recommend that for, and especially in a long-term way, that would still be only compromising, I think, about like 40 to 50% of their total calories. If you want to target it also making carbs like 30% of the calories you're eating, I think is usually a sweet spot. For women's hormones specifically, extremely low carb diets can immediately impact your thyroid hormones. It can make your cortisol higher, which can influence even insulin signaling. So I really don't recommend long-term, very low carb diets for women. And that 130 would be the absolute lowest I would go for menstruating women specifically.
That's a good point about the differences as well between men and women and different needs for carbs. I would say that I'm probably considered low carb. I'm probably under 100. I'm probably somewhere around 100, somewhere like that. For me, it's a little hard to eat more carbs because I've been kind of lower carb for so long it's actually, I just, especially during the day, I just don't like to eat carbs during the day really. And so I'll end
You're
up
not
having
into
them at
them.
night.
Yeah. At night, you'll eat them more
Yeah,
so.
I'll have them. Well, I'll end up
Yeah.
getting super hungry at night because I like keeping high energy. It's probably not ideal, but I like being high energy. And then I just don't like to eat heavy things too much during the day. And then, of course, come dinner
You
time,
like
I'm
to burn the
starving.
candle at both
What's that?
ends. Yeah. You like to burn the candle at both ends. And then at the end of the day, you replenish. I actually find that insulin sensitivity is better at night for a lot of people. Like if I'm doing CGMs and glucose monitors, not late night, but like maybe 5 p.m., just because your insulin's been kind of operating all day. It depends on the
Yeah.
person, but sometimes that works for people. I will say, especially for menstruating women, I really do recommend getting 30 grams of protein and 30 grams of carbs within 30 minutes of waking up. I have like a little formula for that, just because really our glucose pathways, our cortisol pathways are so dependent on what happens in that first hour in the morning that it's really important. That being said, Talor, like yourself, like other, honestly, I would say the prototype of the person who does amazing with low carb diets or intermittent fasting is like a healthy young man with a lot of muscle mass who has a little more metabolic flexibility and whose bodies aren't so cortisol prone. So it does work for some people. It's just usually the people who are promoting it because they feel amazing doing it it's because it works well for
That's
them.
interesting. Yeah, it's usually very mostly fit men who are saying, yeah, like keto. I
And
don't
they're
need
like
any carbs.
40s.
I'm
Yeah.
completely keto. It's like, yeah, usually now that I'm thinking, I'm like literally thinking back of every person who's telling me that, and they've all been like healthy, muscular young men. So interesting.
Yeah. And if you talk to women in their 30s who are like trying to conceive, women in their 30s who are menstruating, they'll like, I notice this in my clients all the time. If I run a Dutch test, if I look at their blood labs, within like 2 weeks, their cortisol is sky high. So that's really just from a very low carb diet. I actually see more women under eating carbs than overeating because our hormones are very dependent on glucose and very dependent on stabilization of those cortisol pathways.
Interesting. Yeah. So I do want to, well, let's ask what type of carbs are your favorite, right? Because so many
Yeah.
carbs are just processed food. So what carbs do you like?
Oh, I'm thinking of what I ate today even. I actually woke up and had a Japanese sweet potato, like those purple ones. Those are my carb of seasonally. I'm just so excited they're back. Like I'm so happy to have them. I know potatoes are like paleo contentious, sweet potatoes versus regular potatoes. I do love and recommend sweet potatoes often to clients. I think legumes are actually sometimes well tolerated, sometimes not, depending on digestion. Starchy vegetables, berries, fruits, usually within my recommendations. And I do love, like, again, any kind of vegetable, starchy or not, usually I find to be really easy to digest for people. And that's what we're including in their plans. Some people do also tolerate white rice quite well. And I know, again, not paleo for you, but I know you're open to everything anyway. But that is usually very of those grains if I'm introducing them. And then oats or gluten-free oats are often well tolerated also.
Got it. And what role does muscle play? Because we just talked about a little bit muscle and how muscular men might have a different type of. What role does muscle play in this metabolism, or how many calories? And yeah, why does someone? Is it just? I assume it's not just weight that says someone's metabolic thing is that they're burning 3,000 calories a day and someone else is only burning 2,000. Obviously, a weight might play some impact, but it seems muscle must have some impact there as well, right?
Absolutely. Muscle, even our gut bacteria, if someone has dysbiosis, their gut will extract more calories from the food that they're eating than someone else's. So certainly our muscle, which has tremendous interface with even our insulin pathway. So insulin, regardless of the amount of calories we're consuming, is going to dictate how efficiently we get energy from the glucose that we're consuming and how well we convert it, right? And bring it into the cell. That's what insulin is kind of like, the guard door to the cell to how it's going to get in. Muscle is more metabolically efficient than fat because of this insulin piece. And also muscle is just more efficient at burning calories than fat is as well. And then again, we have not only this insulin piece, but muscle can be actually anti-inflammatory. We think about myokines versus cytokines, and fat, where it has more of an inflammatory effect and how it kind of interfaces with that immune system. Muscle has kind of an anti-inflammatory effect in some ways.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's not politically correct essentially to say it, but we know that the people who were hospitalized during the pandemic, a very high percentage of them were overweight or obese compared to people who were in healthier weights, right? So that kind of shows you regarding the inflammation and some of the immune system functions there as well. Let's shift gears a
Absolutely.
little
Yeah.
bit and talk about some of the kind of like psychological aspects, right? Of like, okay, so let's say you've coached thousands of clients, and some of them I'm sure have done tremendously well. Maybe some of them just can't keep up. What are some of the psychological tools or differences? I always say the most interesting thing to me is like, again, like we could just say to someone, hey, just go paleo. And someone who's like super motivated and hungry and driven will just take that and run with it. And all you have to tell them is go paleo and they'll lose the weight and change their life and lower inflammation. Other people, it's like they know what to do, but yet they can't do it. What are some of the psychological aspects that you help people with?
Yeah, I think that piece of belief is just so important. So, Talor, I'm known as the dietitian that people go to when they have no hope. I love working with clients who have no hope. To be honest with you, I like when clients have been to I don't like their experience in having to have this happen, but they usually come to me when they've been to conventional dietitians, functional medicine doctors, functional dietitians, and then they're landing in my space. I think the hardest, and hopefully a very safe space. But I think the hardest thing for most people is that our nervous system really learns about our lives and our health through example. So if people have historically not been able to lose weight or not been able to heal in some part of their health, why would they believe that it's possible, right? They wouldn't have any hope because they've never seen they've had any hope, and their body, their nervous system, which is kind of cataloging all of these experiences, won't believe it either. So I think a lot of the work that I do is not in kind of gaslighting people into believing or hoping that something will happen, but really kind of putting that mirror up to people and saying, where are we right now? Why are we here right now? In ways of the whole timeline of your health, that whole experience of your life here. Where can we draw kind of where those kind of different changes in the timeline, those kinks in the timeline brought us to this point? And then how do we walk it back from that foundational perspective and kind of walk towards something we've never experienced before, which is vibrant health or kind of feeling like we're making progress. And then along the way, I'm also reaffirming like, hey, you might not feel like you're feeling better today, but, or you don't feel like your progress is that good, but last week when you were talking to me, you were huffing and puffing when you were walking. This week, you're not experiencing that. So it's about acknowledging those victories along the way when our bodies are so stubborn and never want to acknowledge that we're progressing in any way because we want to hold on to that belief that we can't heal. And that's just, it's a protection mechanism from our body. That's
Yeah.
one strategy for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you have a team of coaches as well. And coaching for me is just absolutely huge, especially for someone who struggled to do it on their own. So talk about like what your coaches are able to do and how they're able to help kind of keep people on track.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have this really kind of first initial consultation, which is extremely comprehensive. And again, that's where we're going through this timeline of someone's health. As a functional dietitian, I'm not only concerned about someone's weight. I'm not only concerned about what they're eating. I'm concerned about who they are as people because different approaches are going to work differently with different clients. So once we establish that timeline, we kind of pull that information into a big puzzle, which I like to call a battle plan. And the battle plan, the reason I call it that is because I break down the recommendations, and my whole team does this, into lifestyle, supplement, nutrition, scheduling, hydration, and we put it all together in this way it's like a 10-page, very intense document that's basically the them document. It's all about our clients, and really we treat each of our clients as, and this is how we feel, the most fascinating people in the entire world, because these little tiny details about our lives, they might not seem important, but they draw this big picture of what's going to work with them. And then after that, we really meet for follow-up sessions. And sometimes a follow-up session is going through a visualization of what life will be like when they're feeling well. And sometimes it's really just talking about a flare, or sometimes it's talking about literally, what are you eating this week? Or what are we going to eat? But we use all different kinds of tools, and not one client journey has ever looked the same as anyone else's. And that's so important to me in training my staff dietitians and nutritionists in making sure that they also view every person as the most important person in the entire world, because that's how I feel about our clients.
Amazing. Yeah. And the accountability part is why I've always loved having coaches too. Just like knowing that not someone who's going to yell at me, right? But someone who's going to hold me accountable, but like in a gentle, nice way. And I know that's kind of one of the things you specialize in as well, as like self-care for people and supporting them. But also having someone where it's like, okay, I know I got to speak with my coach, on Friday. It's going to make you think about it a little bit more. A lot of times I say too to people, they're like, oh, well, what if I just, buddy up with a friend and do some free coaching or whatever? And I'm like, when you actually pay for something, even if it's like just anything, just when you pay, it shows your commitment and you're going to just naturally be more, inclined to actually follow through on it as well.
I just totally agree with you. And accountability looks to me and to you different than like you're saying, oh, you better do this thing. It's, I have clients come to me and they will say, Michelle, my symptoms are worse than ever. Like let's say it's the first week that we're working together. So they're like, my symptoms are worse than ever. And I'm going to say, okay, let's talk about everything you did yesterday. And I'm like, so you thought that drinking wine, not eating regularly, not moving at all for an entire day, stressing yourself out with work was going to make you feel awesome. That's the accountability piece, is like, let's hold that mirror up. Like, did you really think you were going to feel okay when you did all of these things? And I think when people can start to see that what they do in their health actually matters and it actually changes how they feel, it catches like fire, so that they're almost wanting to be accountable to us as coaches, right? They're like, I want to tell you what I did. I did this thing and now I feel better. But we have to prove it to them that like what you're doing matters. What you eat matters. It changes how you physically feel. Being stressed physically shows up in your body. People don't believe it. They never want to believe that stress is potent and physical and inflammatory until they experience feeling good for the first time. And then they have that supportive space to reflect on those things, because they're very quick, like, Talor, to say nothing is working. I'm not okay. I'm never going to be okay. And it's really, like you said, that accountability piece of like, did we do everything in our power to make you feel good yesterday? If we didn't, let's try to do everything in our power. And if that doesn't work, we're going to try something else anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So with regards to like stress and anxiety, I know you've worked with a lot of clients around that. It's an interesting thing, right? Because stress, it's like there's a great book called The Upside of Stress that I always mention on this podcast, which has really helped me reframe the way I look at stress and probably added years of my life just by the way I reframe the way I look at it. And obviously stress is so subjective, because it's like what's stressful for Elon Musk, for example, who is probably not very healthy due to all the stress, but compared to what, a regular person may be handling stress, it's going to be very different. But certainly, I notice that if I don't move in a certain day, right, the days when I actually go to the gym, even if I'm away from my desk for an hour and a half, I usually feel more productive than the days where I got an extra hour and a half of work, but didn't move and just was stagnant and didn't do things like that. So clearly there's a role of obviously exercise and health, but how are you helping people who come to you and they may not even know it, but you can tell, right? They're stressed, they have anxiety. What do you do in those situations?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I so resonate also with the walking piece. And one of my coaches is my doctor, my naturopathic physician. And I will message him and say, hey, my back hurts. And he'll say, hey, did you walk today? And that's all he has to say to me. And I'm like, no. He's like, all right, it's 2 p.m. You haven't walked today. You've been doing work all day. Every single time my back hurts, I know it's because I've been stressed and I haven't walked enough. So it's like we have to learn our own triggers for sure. And that's the work of a lot of the anxiety work I do. I work with clients who also have debilitating panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and really focus on what's the root cause of that. Something that, Talor, you've explored in ways of like inflammation being one of the root causes. I noticed nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar dysregulation. There's a lot of physical reasons why we might be anxious in addition to the emotional reasons. So while therapy is a must, and I think it's essential, in addition to therapy, what we in the work we do is really just focus on like what's making you anxious inside of your body, basically, because that can produce a lot of physiological, brain inflammation and brain anxiety that is as it manifests. And I would say for the clients, I'm a New Yorker. All of my clients are extremely stressed and don't believe stress is a thing, and they're very resilient, which is something you tapped on too. So being resilient in some areas doesn't mean that we can tolerate extreme trauma and stress without consequence. So I like to say we love to be a little stressed a lot of the time, but too much stress is just too much stress. So there is kind of a bucket and a threshold. The body loves to be challenged and loves to have little stressors that we can fight through and then say, ooh, we won and we did that. And then it makes our body more efficient and smarter. But once we go over that boundary, that's when it turns into anxiety. That's when it turns into panic attacks and also physiological consequences as well.
Yeah, 100%. I really, really resonate with that. I really, really resonate with that a lot because you can just tell when, someone has that kind of anxiety and stress. But the thing is now it's interesting because I have to think back to now that I eat so healthy and I feel so clean, I can kind of naturally feel when I've overstretched myself, when I need a rest, right? Whereas if I'm just drinking, 4 cups of coffee every day and, just kind of just powering through it, taking energy drinks or doing whatever and just continuing to push, and I might not even realize where I'm at in this cycle, right? So it's really important. I find that when you start exercising regularly and eating cleaner, you start to become a little more in tune with your body and you can say, okay, you know what? I was going to go to the gym today, but I need the day off. I'm just going to do a sauna or go for a walk or something like that, right?
What you're saying is so right on. And I think what's underneath that in the subtext is that people have no idea what it's like to feel okay or feel well. So when you were sick, Talor, which I know you beautifully speak into your story also, it's like you don't even believe that how you feel is abnormal. You're just like, oh, this is my life, kind of. Like, this is just how I feel when I wake up. I just feel horrible when I wake up. When people start to get those glimmers of hope on their healing journey and they start to feel better and they're like, oh my God, that's how I felt every day. I can't believe I felt like that and I was functioning like that. The hard part is getting people to that point. And then once they're at that point, it becomes a lot easier, like you're saying, because it's hard for me to tell, very intense, not only New Yorkers, my client, like I'm Jewish, my community, like these are very anxious people, to tell them that anxiety isn't a normal part of their personality or a normal part of their life, I think is really challenging until they have a day without it. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is how other people feel when they wake up. Oh my gosh, I haven't felt this way my entire life.
That's such a good point. I love that. Michelle, this has been really eye-opening. I really love it. And I think if people want to lose weight, they should do it the healthy way, the right way, the sustainable way. And where can people learn more from you, follow you, sign up for your coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on. You are just an incredible interviewer. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful sitting down with you. They can find me on my podcast. I have a podcast, Quiet the Diet. And then our amazing virtual nutrition team, which works with people all over the country, is at Michelle Shapiro RD or MichelleShapiroRD.com. I'm on Instagram with the same name. And we have a bunch of different ways we work with people in addition to that one-on-one coaching.
Amazing. Well, this has been really a pleasure. We've gone into some great topics. I think you've really shown people how they can do it in a sustainable, healthy way. It doesn't have to be so hard and fatiguing and that kind of thing. You can really do it in a nice way. And I think if people have been trying to lose weight and you're listening to this and you haven't been able to do it on your own, I'm a big, big advocate of a coach. I've had usually 2 to 3 coaches at any given time in different areas of my life for the last several years. I'm a big advocate of it, and it's personally helped me tremendously. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, and it was such a pleasure to have you on. Hope we could do it again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. The joy is mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. peakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic vegan and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.